Hello, everyone, on this St. Patty's Day. Hope you're wearing green. This is Kristen Huffman. I am the artistic director of the New Paradigm Theater Company, and you're attending our Sunday Spotlight, which is actually produced by our New Paradigm Theater Youth Board with a little guidance from me. And on the call tonight, we have Matt Sweeney. Matt, say hello.
Hi guys, how you doing?
Matt is a junior at Stanford High School, and he's in Guys and Dolls right now, so you should go see him. Matt is that guy right there, circling his head. That's Matt, and he's terrific. You can see some of the activities of our youth board. We're a nonprofit professional theater company, and what's great is we actually have a junior or a youth board that also helps and participates and guides us. And we have board meetings. You can see us here, and of course, we all have laptops there at those. And we do caroling and different activities for seniors and reaching out. And we may actually have something special going on this summer as well. We'll keep you posted about that. But we decided that Sunday Spotlight was a nice way for free to bring you amazing people like Bruce Sabath. And you can read a little bit of his bio there. Bruce was in company with me on Broadway, and we're excited that he agreed to take his St. Patty's Day and spend some of it with us, giving you his tips and his tricks and his way of approaching the business. And boy, I'll tell you what, when I was starting out, if I'd had a chance to talk to somebody like Bruce or the people that we've brought to you so far, I don't know, I'd chewed off my left arm because, you have to learn the hard way. And I'm sure Bruce did too. And you hope that people are generous enough with their time, in the shows that you're at that will give you some tips. But this was really great of him. Now I want to let you know, you can type in a question and I will see it. And if it's a great question, we uh I will let you ask those questions. In fact, I see there are a couple of questions already, which is great. I'll probably let everyone ask the questions because we like.
Web events made easy.
Oops, is that okay?
Yep. Sorry about that.
That was Bruce. That's fine. And there's a little bit of feedback on that one too, so we might want to. There you go. Perfect. All right. So Bruce, welcome and thank you. So everybody,
Thank you for having me.
great, super. And you've all had a chance to read a little bit of his bio. Oh, see how good I am with PowerPoint. All right. And I'm going to hand it off to Matt.
All right, so what fueled your shift from the Wall Street world to the theater and film and TV world?
Great question, Matt. Thanks for that, and thanks for having me.
Of
Um,
course.
well, when I was a kid in high school, like you are now, and even before that, I was always a performer. I did a lot of theater, I did a lot of music, a lot of singing, and that was all really very much of who I thought I was. But I was also very good at math and science and other things. And as I sort of grew up, I decided that what you're really supposed to do with your life is you're supposed to, do something like that, and something that's practical and responsible. And so I, went to college. I majored in applied math and computer science, and I got my MBA, and spent many years on Wall Street and in corporate strategy, and doing what I thought I was supposed to be doing. And I always felt like it wasn't quite, you know, right for me. It was kind of, I was doing fine. It was fine, but I there was always something that seemed to be missing, and I really wasn't happy. And I felt like I really should be happy, and that's something that people, should aspire to.
Mhm.
And it took me quite a long time, but I finally figured out that the reason I wasn't happy was that I was kind of pursuing a career that was, not really my idea of what I wanted to do, but kind of what I thought I was supposed to be doing. And it took a long time, but I finally figured out that the thing that I wanted to be doing was the thing that I always did when I was younger, which was to be acting.
Mm.
And so I finally, this was probably about 1997. I'd been, working in on Wall Street and in corporate strategy for a number of years, and finally said I really should be doing this. And so I started sort of dipping my toe in, and realized that if I was going to do it, that I really needed to do more than dip my toe in. And I
Hmm.
decided I'm really going to go for this. So I decided to take some serious acting courses. I spent really 2 years training with William Esper at the William Esper Studio in New York, as well as putting together kind of what I call an a la carte MFA,
Mm-hmm.
with movement and voice and a whole array of other things that one really needs to really hone their craft, and really took it very seriously. And finding the right teachers was always really an important part, and still is an important part to me of being a serious actor. And it took a lot of dedication and a lot of perseverance, but I started getting roles, and was very lucky to make my Broadway debut with Kristen and company, and the rest is history.
And speaking of that, we have Sophie who has a question along those lines. Sophie?
Hi. We've heard Kristen's story about how she got involved with company. What was the process like for you?
Of getting into company?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yes.
interestingly, I don't know if you guys are familiar with sort of the open call process, EPAs and so on in New York. If you're a member of Actors Equity, there are, for most shows that go up, there are these open calls called equity principal auditions.
Mhm.
And a lot of people kind of poo-poo them because they think, oh, these things are cast. The casting directors really only want to see people who have agents and come to the agent appointments. But let me tell you something. That is not always the case, and I'll tell you why. Because when I was, getting into this business and had, very few really fancy credits, I went to a lot of EPAs. I went to pretty much every EPA that there was any sort of relevance to, my type and capabilities. And people started getting used to seeing me. And I had gone to the EPA for Sweeney Todd that John Doyle was directing, which was about a year before Company. John had directed Sweeney Todd in London using the same approach of actors that were also instrumentalists to create the cast and the orchestra on stage. And I had gone to the EPA for Sweeney Todd with my clarinet, and I met the casting director at Bernard Telsey, which was Bethany Knox, and she saw me play and sing my clarinet at the Sweeney Todd audition. And my type and instrument combination was wrong for Sweeney Todd, but she remembered me. And when it was time for Company, they were really looking for, sort of a guy of my type who could play the clarinet. And they called. I had sort of submitted myself, to the Company audition process, and they called me in because they remembered me from the EPA, from Sweeney Todd. That's how I got my audition for Company. Did an audition for Bethany Knox. She called me back to meet John Doyle. Had a lovely audition with John, and that was really the process. There was supposed to be another round of auditions that Stephen Sondheim was coming to, and many of the cast went through that process. I actually had to leave town for another play that I was doing in Florida, and I wasn't going to be around for this final round with Stephen Sondheim, and I was actually kind of going crazy because I was like, oh my God, I have to somehow get back to New York for this audition to meet Stephen Sondheim, otherwise I'm going to lose this role. And then I got a call saying, you don't need to come back to New York. John has decided you're in. And
They didn't. I don't think any of us had to do that. That's what I was told, that because I was going crazy too and thought I would faint just singing for him, much less playing sax and playing flute. And then he decided he trusted John enough that he didn't have to see us.
Yeah.
Which
So
is
that was the process.
Yeah, cool. All right. Oops, sorry.
So before we go to the next question, I'm just curious. When you started taking these acting lessons and really trying to hone your craft before you put yourself out there, were you still working on Wall Street, or did you kind of just drop everything and say, all right, I'm just going to put myself into this, full force?
Well, it was about May of 1997 that I decided that I was going to do this. I was working for American Express at the time as director of strategic planning.
My dad works for American Express.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Well, he probably knows some of the people that I used to work with. Wait, what's your last name?
Sweeney.
Sweeney. What's your dad's? Well, we talk about it later. Anyway, So I actually went to a couple of auditions while I was still working at American Express, and I kind of got thank you very much. And I realized that, I might have been one of the most talented kids in my high school, but if I was going to pursue this for real in New York, in the competition of like people who were studying this through college and were doing this really seriously, that I had a lot of work to do. And so I did decide to leave American Express so that I could start really concentrating on my studies. And so I left American Express at the end of June and started in that summer on a 6-week intensive program at the Esper Studio, working with Bill's wife, Suzanne. And then that fall, I decided to start the 2-year program with Bill in September. And, so it was pretty much full-time studying from that point on.
Cool.
For 2 solid years.
Okay. All right.
All right. So, are there any lessons that you learned while working on Wall Street that you can kind of apply to your role as an actor?
Well, I don't know about lessons on Wall Street so much. I would say that, just working for a company where there's a high level of professionalism, where you have to communicate with people on a pretty rapid basis. You need to be clear. You need to, communicate. You need to respond to requests quickly. Those kinds of things, I think I learned actually a lot about working on Wall Street and in the other companies that I worked for after I was on Wall Street at American Express. And in between, I worked for a company called the Boston Consulting Group. But probably one of the most important things I learned as a strategist, a strategy consultant, was the idea of understanding your mission. And more I hear people talking about that and sort of understanding your brand. What is it you're trying to do? What's important to you? To be able to articulate to yourself, why you're doing this. I mean, being an actor is a crazy thing to do. if there's something else that you think you might want to do, do that.
Yeah.
But if you're going to be an actor, you really need to understand, why you're doing it, and try to understand what are the important activities that are going to support that. So one of the very first things that I did when I started pursuing acting was to write a mission statement. What it was, why I wanted to be an actor and what that meant to me. And I followed that up with sort of a series of fairly basic other actionable goals that were going to help me to do that. Things like, networking and training and, physical work to make sure that my body could, support what I needed to get, my craft to do. Financial goals to make sure that I could, without too much risk, support what I was trying to do in terms of, that side of thing. So all of those things would always be in my mind in terms of making decisions, and what the kinds of things I wanted to audition for, the kind of training I needed to do, the kind of people I needed to try to meet. All of those things stemmed from those goals, which stemmed from a mission statement, and that sort of mindset is something that I learned really as a strategy consultant.
Nice. Carly has a question for you.
Hi, Carly.
Hi, Bruce. How are you?
How are you?
I was wondering, for those who plan on doing this as a career, what are 3 things you should never do in this business?
Never do.
Never do.
Let's see. Well, I don't know. This may be a reversal of that, but one thing is you never know when you're going to meet people again.
Yeah.
So you should never be you should never burn bridges.
Yep.
Yes.
Because you may think, I never want to deal with that person again, but you never know if you'll see that person again. And you also never know who that person is hanging out with or talking about. So the reverse of that statement is always take the high road.
Mm-hmm.
I think. You know, there's a lot of things, you know, that will seem unfair in the process of this business, but you kind of just got to, you know, let it slide and know that, you know, your time will come, and the person who wronged you, you know, karma will get them, and you don't have to
I'm a great believer in karma.
to do that. What else should you never do? You should never take a role because you think I have to do that for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
The opposite of that is know why you take a role. So you know there's all kinds of good reasons to take a role, and I always think about, you know, is it a role I really want to play? If it's like a famous role, you know, role that I that is a familiar role. Are the people that I'm going to be working with, are they people that I would like to work with, which could include the director or the producer or other cast people? Is the theater one that has, you know, a good reputation that's going to advance, you know, my career? Is, you know, is there, you know, is the money something that, you know, sometimes money is a reason why you might take a role, right? But there's always, you know, you need to understand the reasons that you think are important for taking on a role, and sort of weigh those as you consider a role. And if none of them are there, then red lights should start, you know, going off in your head, red flags, and you should go, okay, that's probably not a role I should feel obligated to take. The other thing which may be related to that is you should never stop the rest of your life to do sort of obsessively do just one thing. Now, I think we're all obsessive about acting. You know, if you're on this call, you probably are. I know I am too. But you are a whole person, all of you, and you know, your life and your craft and everything about you is built around everything that you are, all the aspects of your life. And if you don't have other experiences, joys and sorrows and relationships and things that you like to do with your time, jobs, whatever, then you're not going to have anything to draw on. You're going to have to be a very kind of narrow actor and not very interesting. So I would say don't defer life events. You know, don't miss your friends' weddings and things like that because you think something might be. I mean, there'll be plenty of times when you will have to miss those things because you know, a commitment comes along and you know, you got to miss them. But don't plan to, you know, plan to go to them, and you know, and if then you have to cancel at the last minute, do that. But plan to go, and sort of and plan to and continue to live your life fully while you pursue your acting passion.
Great.
All right, awesome. So we all, well, at least I do. I hear from directors about, you know, there's a difference between film acting and stage acting and all these things. So, what are some similarities and differences between, you know, what is film acting and what is stage acting?
Well, you know, I think whether there's a huge range of sort of energy that you can bring to your acting, depending on sort of the level of projection and so on that you're trying to get across. If you're acting on stage, as you know, I'm sure many of the people listening are stage actors and have a lot of experience on stage, then you know that you have to somehow get your energy to a level that even the people sitting way in the back can understand what you're saying and can can feel what you're feeling along with you, which requires more volume, more energy, more intensity, and so on. And depending on the style, it may even be more physicality. That's not always true, depending on the type of stage project that you're doing. If you're working in film, you're really you're able to really live in a much more real level, not amplified. The microphone and the camera will pick up everything that you do, and you're probably in close-up, or you don't have to worry about speaking any louder than you would if you were just trying to talk to the person who you're supposed to be talking to, and everything can be as if you were just in a room talking with someone. So and in fact, if you try to act, if you're trying to emote, if you're trying to get across something, the camera will see you acting, and it will look ridiculous. In TV, especially like in sitcoms, for example, there's kind of a mixture, because it's done on a sound stage. It's done with a live audience often, and I'm only speaking academically here because I've never done a sitcom. But if you watch one, you'll get the sense. It's almost like you're watching a play. The volumes are louder. People are turned outward. If they're sitting at a table, you'll often see like the front third of the table is empty. Strangely, like people are sitting around the table, and yet there's no one on the front third of it. Well, because it's kind of like a play, which is how a play might be staged. And people are talking a little too loud, and they're acting a little too big. So that even though it's on screen, the acting style is sometimes closer to what we associate with stage acting.
Cool.
Interesting. So how do you handle the rejection associated with the theater business?
Oh man, that's a great question, and it is constant. Let me tell you. My job, I'm an actor, but my real job is looking for work. And most of the time, you go on auditions, and the vast majority of the time, you don't get the job. And I guess at some point, that's just I've learned that, okay, I'm just going to go and assume that I'm not going to get it, and it's not a big deal. Now, of course, sometimes you feel like, oh, this is a job that I really, really want, and you really prepare, and you do a lot of legwork, research, and rehearsal, and you get really ready, and you think like, there's no possible way that I couldn't get this job, and then you don't. And and you're going like, how could that have happened? And I mean, of course, you go through all those things. You doubt yourself. You wonder, why am I doing this? Am I just kidding myself? Do I have anything to offer at all? Should I Wall Street? And it's really hard. But you sort of start to learn, look, it's not, when they say no, it's not that they're really saying no to you. It's just that someone else met their needs more exactly than you did. Sometimes you learn, you can assess your performance in an audition and say, there's things that I could have done better, and next time I will. So you can learn from those situations. But you kind of, a lot of times the best thing to do is just start. You finish one audition, you find out that it's not going to happen, you're not going to get it. Move on and start working on something that you'd like to work on. Work on a new song, work on an old song that you like. Work on, just sort of move on and continue to look forward and not dwell on the things that have all the no's from the past.
Right.
But it is hard. There's no way to sugarcoat it. There's a lot of rejection. Just accept it and remind yourself of the times that people have loved your performances, and know that you have something to offer, and move on.
So Shelley doesn't have a microphone, so I'm going to ask her a question for her. She wants to know, what was the first role where you realized I can do this acting wise?
Well, let's see.
And what are those 3 roles that we see right there? Tell them what those are.
Okay, that is the top right. That's me playing Macbeth, and the middle one is me playing Oberon, and the bottom one is me playing Amos Hart in Chicago.
And you do a lot of just regular plays, obviously, as well as musicals.
I do. I like to mix it up.
Mm-hmm.
For whatever reason, I like all of these art forms. I mean all of these acting styles.
Mm-hmm.
I like doing plays. I like doing musicals. I like doing film and TV, and there's something in me that says I refuse to let the industry decide that I'm just a musical theater actor, or
Right.
that I'm just this or just that. I am going to show them that I can do all of these things.
And what are the 2 that we're looking at there?
On the right, that's me as Stuart Gellman in Caroline or Change,
Mm.
the musical by Janine Tesori and Tony Kushner.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's you can probably guess, that's 1776, me playing Dickinson. That production was at Yorktown Stage, and that was that's kind of an interesting historical point in my career, because that was one of the first roles that I got before I was Equity, and I live up in Westchester, and Yorktown Stage is not too far from me. They used to do a lot more sort of semi-professional,
mm-hmm.
adult-oriented theater. Nowadays they tend to do more youth theater.
Mm-hmm.
But I early on, after I had finished the Esper program, I auditioned for them, and I got the role of Dickinson, which I thought was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a couple years after that I auditioned for 1776 at West Virginia Public Theater, which at the time was an Equity theater. And and I had very few credits on my resume, but they were interested in me because it's a very quick summer stock thing. There's a sort of a 1-week rehearsal, 1-week performance model, and they wanted a guy who had played the role before. So that non-Equity job that I did for Yorktown Stage probably was responsible for me helping to get the role of Dickinson at the Equity production of 1776 at West Virginia. And that production, that was my first Equity role.
Awesome. And then this is another company where you played a different character.
That's right. That's company at Jiva Theater in Rochester. When I did it on Broadway, I played Larry, and in this production, I played Harry, who was married to Sarah, and Sarah is the role that Kristen played. Mm-hmm. And if you've ever seen Company, you know that there is a karate fight between Sarah and Harry in the production, and that is me with Michelle Ragusa as Sarah. And that karate match was really fun. We actually did it, we in the Broadway production, it was done very stylized with Kristen and Keith Butterbaugh playing Harry on the opposite side of the stage, acting as if they were having the karate match, but actually never coming into physical contact, which is a very cool way to do it. In the Jiva production, we did the more traditional way, which we actually had a choreographed karate match.
And this one's interesting.
Yeah, that's me as Richard Nixon in Frost Nixon.
Awesome.
That was a really fun role, and it's an amazing play. That's Win Harmon playing David Frost, and that was down at the Caldwell Theater in Boca Raton. Tremendous fun doing that show and playing that role.
That's awesome. Great. And there's Gypsy. Where was that?
That was at Forestburg Playhouse.
Okay.
That's Leslie Alexander in the role of Mama Rose, and I'm playing Herbie there.
Nice. So Shirley wants to know, how long should your acting reel be? Too long gets boring, too short, not enough experience.
I would say 2 or 3 minutes max.
How many examples?
I would say, kind of 20-second, 30-second cuts would be, good. These days, because you, if you have an account on Actors Access, which if you're a working actor, you should. It's free to have the account, but you can pay for a little extras. You can post your reels on Actors Access, and you can cut your reel up into as many pieces as you want. And when you post it on Actors Access, so in the old days, when you basically had to deliver a reel to an agent or a casting director, you had and basically you were kind of stuck with one product. Or maybe you would have two. You have a comedy reel and a drama reel or whatever, film reel, TV reel. The contents of that reel were static, and you had to decide what they were, and it had to be a certain length, because as we all know, don't want to get it too long.
Right.
But because of the way we deliver media now, which is always online, you may want to have a reel like that, which is clips, but you can also just put on just one clip on of yourself, and you can let people choose, or you could choose a combination of this clip and that clip and that clip. Right. When you choose which ones of your video chunks you want to include in the submission on Actors Access. And if you have a website or YouTube page or whatever, you can do the same thing. So more and more, I'd say, think about making your video offering more a la carte than sort of, or I should say, in addition to just that 3-minute static reel that you're going to have that's front, beginning to end.
Great. So Shirley, she's asking a lot of questions. Anybody else can type in questions as well. She wants to know, if you have little or no money, how can you practice, hone acting skills besides community theater?
Well, if you have, I don't know, a couple of things. Community theater is a great option. And if you're in the New York area, there's always showcases as well, where you can get opportunities to get cast in things in the city, where sometimes actual industry people come and stuff. Other things that you can do to help practice your craft, again with the advent of technology, is to tape yourself. Cost money to go and take classes and get feedback from teachers and so on, and that's always a very good thing to do. But if you're short on cash and you have a video camera or just your phone and someone to hold it for you, or a tripod or whatever, do a scene, work on a scene, either if the monologue, if it's just you, or a scene with a friend who's an actor, and do it together. And you can learn a ton, I think, from watching your own performance. This is kind of a new idea. I mean, even a lot of theater people sort of bristle at that idea, but I really think it's incredibly valuable. And if you're working, it's sort of common in the film and TV world. If you take classes, it's always done on. You do it on camera, and then you look back at your tape, and the teacher will critique it while you're watching it. That never happens sort of in the theater world,
right?
But I sort of think it should. You can really learn a ton by seeing your performance and seeing if it's different than you thought it was.
We have them tape. I have them tape. My college kids tape their master class
Mm-hmm.
So they can look back at it because they all have Macs or their
Yep.
iPhones,
Mm-hmm.
Tell us what we're looking at here on the right.
That was me as was I? Who was I in that? It was some TV. Jesus, I was some Roman, and I can't remember. It was for some reenactment thing
Caesar?
early on the History Channel, and I can't even remember what the character was. It'll come back. It'll come to me.
Guy with a six pack.
I was some Roman emperor, but I can't remember which one.
Okay, maybe Caesar. And then this on the left?
Yeah, this is from a show that I just finished with Prospect Theater. This was a project called Portraits.
Oh.
And Prospect, which is a wonderful theater company in the city, does an annual musical theater lab where they bring in about 8 composing teams, lyricists and libretticists,
Mm-hmm.
and they give them a theme. This year the theme was portraits, and they presented them with a very large gallery of portraits that had been pulled from the Met and MoMA and the National Portrait Gallery and the National Gallery of Photography and all sorts of other sources. And they had each of the composer teams pick one portrait and write a musical that was 10 to 15 minutes long about that portrait.
Oh.
And so the result was 8 short musicals presented in an evening, and that evening was repeated. We had 6 performances.
Wow.
And there were 8 actors, and the 8 actors were the cast for all 8 of those musicals. Well, we weren't in all of them. Like I was in 4. Some people were in 5, whatever. Mm-hmm. And each of those musicals was really interesting and fun, and it was a really fun group of composers and great group of actors, and really creative process.
Emily.
That one, that was called the Daguerreotype, which was inspired by a portrait of a black woman from the late 1800s, black and white formal portrait, and the composers imagined that this woman, mm-hmm. played here by Jen Fouché, was a woman who was perhaps born into slavery and now free, and she had saved all of her money so that she could get a portrait of herself from which was a daguerreotype, sort of a precursor to photography, very expensive, but for some reason she felt it was important that she could show her children and grandchildren who she was. And she doubts, her decision to do that, and the sort of crazy daguerreotypist is inspired by her sincerity and moves her to try to bring out her true self through this process.
It's kind of like This Is Your Life, isn't it? Emily has a question for you. Emily?
Oh, hi.
Hi.
I was wondering, when you were just getting started out and, you didn't have a lot of credits yet or contacts maybe, how did you find out about auditions?
Well, at the time, the sort of main source for auditions was Backstage, and that's still a great source for a lot of projects. And I would get that Backstage every, come out on Wednesday night, the Thursday edition, and I would go through it with a fine-tooth comb and circle every audition that seemed to make sense. And that included a lot of showcases, as I described before, in New York. Sort of these no-pay, but interesting prospects in terms of getting some experience. I did a lot of those. A lot of no-pay independent films and student films and things like that. They were all in Backstage. Now you guys have a lot more resources at your disposal in terms of casting with Actors Access online and all the various other similar online casting sources.
And that kind of goes off of, I want to unmute Elise. Elise, you want to ask your question, although it's kind of, he answered some of that, didn't he?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, because at least wanted to know. You can still ask him a question. Maybe he has a few more ideas.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Elise.
No, that's basically it.
Okay, great. She just wanted to know if there were some other resources in the New York and New England area to find out about auditions.
Yeah, I mean, I still think that those are the best ones. You guys, I mean, I know that there are other online sources. I'm trying to think. It's Casting Networks. Is that the other um, one that's pretty good in terms of online casting opportunities? But there are several others, and I'm sure that as you talk with your friends, you will find sort of what are the sort of the ones that people tend to, in terms of producers and casting people, the ones that they tend to use most. But I do believe that it's still really Backstage and Actors Access are the two biggest.
This is really my own question because I think this, as you get older, you want to know, of course, that you can have a family, you can have a life as well. So, how do you balance a career in the entertainment industry with a family as well?
Well, it's it's never perfect. Oh, look, there they are. That's my gang. That's me on the right, and that's my son Jeremy next to me. He's 18, freshman in college. My wife Karen, and my son Mike, who is a freshman in high school. And it is a very difficult thing. I heard a great interview with Mercedes Ruehl about a year ago, and it was a very similar question. And I'm going to steal from her because what she said was so perfect, which is you can't balance your career and family because whenever you're doing something intensely on your career, you feel like you're shorting your family. And whenever you're sort of like heavily involved with your family, you feel like you're shortchanging your career. And these two imbalances are constantly fighting each other. So somehow there's a fluidity to it. You have to kind of go back and forth, and every decision has to be made based on sort of where you are at that moment. And like I was talking about before about the decisions you make in terms of taking a job. So when you have a family, there's one more big element that comes into play in terms of that decision-making process, which is, is this job valuable enough to me for my career, for the experience, or for whatever it is, that if I have to leave my family for a period of time, is that something that's going to make sense?
What's the longest that you've been away from them?
The longest was, I think, actually the period that, with a few days home in between, the period that included company in Cincinnati. I had, as I mentioned, I left New York sort of in the middle of that audition process for company to go do a show in Florida, and that was in November. And while I was in Florida, I got word that I had, booked company at Cincinnati Playhouse, and actually there was going to be an overlap between the two gigs, and I had to actually leave a week early to finish the job that I was doing in Florida to come and do the job in Cincinnati. So I had to tell my first employers that I was going to be having to leave the production ahead of schedule, which is something that happens in our business, and people understand, and especially since they knew the significance of that particular job and where it might lead, they were like, Godspeed, go, we'll handle it, and they had to hire somebody to replace me. But basically, I came home for 2 days and then went right back out to Cincinnati for another 3 months. So that was like a 6-month stint. And actually, I think that was the longest time that I've sort of been away, if you call that one chunk.
Right.
that I've been away for 6 months, and I haven't really pursued the kind of like serious long-term out-of-town
Tours.
tours and cruise ship jobs and things like that
Hmm.
that could take me away for a really long time. I actually had I was offered the role of the father in Finding Nemo, which is an ongoing long-term production at Disney World a few years ago, and I decided not to do it because it was a minimum of a 6 month contract. They really wanted it for a year,
Wow.
but the minimum they would accept was 6 months. And while the money was good, I decided, again, this is sort of like this kind of balancing you do. It's like, okay, what does it do in terms of your acting long-term career? Well, is it a role that I really want to play? Well, not really. Is it? I mean, in terms
Yeah,
of,
yeah. It's not
can,
Frost Nixon.
is it going to really, test my mettle as an actor? No. And is it going to advance my career from a, marketing point of view? Well, even though thousands and thousands and thousands of people will see me, they won't actually know it's me.
Right.
Because in those Disney World plays, those productions, there's no program, nobody knows who the actors are, and in fact, in that particular one, as in like The Lion King and other these puppet, it's a very puppet oriented show, so the actors actually work fish puppets. There's a lot of flying, and the character is actually a fish that's above you, and so they're watching the fish and not you anyway. So I was like, it didn't really pass the value test.
Right. Right. All right, because that was I think an important thing to ask. A lot of young people are on the call, and it's interesting to know that you can have a family. You just have to really prioritize. Plus, you have to have an amazing wife or spouse, husband, spouse, partner
Yes,
who will
it does
understand.
help.
Right. Let's see. Next, we're going to take 2 weeks off, gang. We've been doing it every week, Sunday Spotlight, and we've really enjoyed it, and I think everyone has learned a lot. But next weekend is Passover, and the week after that is Easter. So the following April 7th, we're going to have Randy Graff on. Now, that picture right there should tell you who she is. She was the very first Fantine in Les Mis on Broadway, and she also has been in City of Angels, I think Amen, Name is Alice, a lot of other Broadway, off Broadway types of things, plus film, plus TV. So that's going to be a really interesting one. And I will tell you something. We only have space for 100 people on our Sunday spotlights, and they're growing every time. So we would love to make sure that you register for that one. Again, it's all free, which is great. But here's the thing: we're on a free trial with our Sunday Spotlight. And we to purchase this go-to webinar, what you're on right now, is actually something like $2,000 for a whole year. And we'd like to keep being able to do this every other week, because every week we took a poll last time, and it seemed that every other week actually worked really well. And I'd love to keep bringing you people like Bruce, and please, thank him. Bruce, you're on Facebook, aren't you?
Of course.
Yep. So you can find Bruce on Facebook, or do you have a website that you want to tell us?
I have my website is brucesabath.com.
Okay, great.
You can find me on IMDb also, and
Right, look him up, just
see the
Google
things that
him.
I've done.
And so you can, send him a message and thank him for being on this personally if you like, or if you had a question you didn't have a chance to ask, that's fabulous. Just ask that question. If you have more questions, let me know right now. But you can scan this little code right here and it'll take you, or you can go to www.rockethub.com/20442, or just go there and search Sunday Spotlight, because any donation at all will help us get to that $2,000 mark. I think we only have 15 days left. We have 305 raised so far. And our youth board is working hard to try to raise some money. But of course, any little bit helps. You get little different prizes too for different amounts. And then we'll be able to continue offering these for free for an entire year. And you can learn from people like Bruce. At the end, you'll also get a you'll like our Facebook page, NPT Youth Presents Sunday Spotlight, because we post every time we have a new link, and it's always a new link, by the way. If you used the old link, you found that, oh, that webinar isn't happening. So for each new person, there's a new link. And you will, again, April 7th, mark that on your calendars. At the very end of this, you'll get a survey. You'll probably get it on your screen, but you'll also get it in an email, and those help us to know what you got out of tonight, and how we can make these better. If you have any suggestions, we want to know. And again, we super, super want to thank Bruce for being a part of our Sunday Spotlight, and it was exciting for Matt. Did you have any final questions you wanted to ask him?
Actually, you answered some of the questions that I had planned on asking, so that's
Great.
awesome.
Great. And Matt,
Well-
again, is the president of our youth board and does a great job. Go see him in Guys and Dolls out in, if you're near Stamford. When does that go up,
Yes.
Matt?
That goes up in the second weekend of May and closes the third
Oh,
weekend
great.
of May.
Great. Well, we'll be there. Thank you again, Bruce. We really appreciated you taking your time to be a part of our Sunday Spotlight.
My
Yeah,
pleasure.
thank you so much.
It was a pleasure talking to you guys, and I hope it was helpful.
It was. Good luck with everything you're doing coming up.
You too, Kristen.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.